The MC20 is everything you might want a Maserati sports car to be. Fast, race-ready, grand and gorgeous. Everything's been developed from scratch, including the engine, and there's a choice of coupe or convertible body styles, both with plenty of want factor.
So here we are with the first new mid-engined Maserati super sports car in a generation, the MC20. It marks a whole new era for this famous Italian maker, and it's been a while coming. Well, let's start with the name. The M stands for Maserati, the C for Corsa, Italian for racing. 20 designates the year of model unveiling, which you might not have guessed because this car's most direct predecessor, the low-volume MC12, was unveiled back in 2004. And yes, it has been that long since Maserati has had a contender in the Ferrari segment. Now perhaps that partly had something to do with the brand's previously close ties with Ferrari, which often left it reticent to step on Maranello's toes. But with a switch of Maserati ownership to the sprawling Stellantis group in 2021, those ties have been severed. Maserati is no longer deferential to Ferrari. It wants to beat Enzo's brand on its own terms. And that's a quest that starts right here with this car, offered in both this coupe form and as a glass-topped Spider model. It's rumoured that Stellantis wanted this to be an Alfa Romeo. Well, we can only say that it does feel properly like a Maserati, finally launched in 2021 and developed in just 2 years using digital processes and a diverse range of partners, many from motorsport. Just as impressively, the all-new 3-litre V6 twin-turbo Nettuno engine is entirely Maserati's own, creating, well, what? A lottery-level super sports car genuinely capable of taking on the best in the business? As usual, for the answer, you're going to need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. So, an entirely new Maserati you can genuinely call a kind of supercar. How long is it since we've had one of those? After decades of borrowing engines from Ferrari down the road at Maranello, Maserati struck out in Stellantis Group-owned independence and developed its own power plant for this car. It's a twin-turbocharged 3-litre Nettuno V6 that sits in a cradle just behind you. Press the blue steering wheel-mounted button and it fires into life with a guttural roar and a satisfying exhaust crackle. The signs are good. As you'd want given the lottery winner's price tag, it is brutally quick, thanks to 630 horsepower and 730 Newton meters. Expected figures for a super sports car that wants to take on established class contenders like the Ferrari Roma and the McLaren GTS. The big guns in this segment, well, they now offer over 700 horsepower, but you won't miss the lack of that here. Engage launch control via this black steering wheel button, and 62 miles an hour is rapidly dispatched in just 2.9 seconds. 124 mph passes in just 9 seconds on the way to a top speed of 203 miles an hour. Vastly quicker than anything else Maserati has made in the last decade, which is all very supercar-like, as is the handling, incidentally, developed in partnership with F1 specialists Dallara. This is the company responsible for this car's light, stiff, race-derived carbon fibre monocoque. Power is sent to the rear wheels via an 8-speed DCT auto transmission that's been borrowed from the Corvette C8 and produced by US firm Tremec, but here it's more emotively controlled by the usual huge Maserati aluminium paddle shifters. Upshifts, well, they're pretty much always smooth, but this dual clutch unit is sometimes rather hesitant on downshifts in automatic mode. Ride is controlled by a double wishbone sport suspension setup. This has adjustable damping. The ferocity of that you can vary by using this rather prominent transmission tunnel dial to switch between the various provided drive modes. There's wet, there's GT, there's sport, and there's Corsa. There are 2 levels of damper stiffness for each of those. In the wet and GT settings, you notice immediately that the ride isn't as nervous or unsettled as it is with obvious rivals. That is an entirely intentional attribute. Maserati wants you to enjoy this car just as much on a long distance GT trip as on your favourite winding road back from the office. Traversing narrower back routes though, well, you'll certainly feel this car's prodigious width. Move up into sport and the car feels sharper, the engine gets louder, and you begin to feel tarmac tears rather more readily. You'll want to try the top track setting, that's Corsa, but once you've done that on a public road, well, you're rather unlikely to want to do that again, because the gear shifts, well, they're really quite abrupt, and the ride on porous surfaces, that can be bordering on downright uncomfortable. Of course, the powertrain and stability control systems adjust their responses according to drive mode setting too, although interestingly, as in a McLaren or a Ferrari, the steering weight, which is ideally judged, always stays the same. Through the turns, the MC20 loves to change direction like a shark turning towards a meal, but without the track refugee nervousness that you might get in a rival McLaren or Lamborghini. It's just every day more usable. Despite quite a prodigious curb weight of well over 1.5 tons, the Italian makers really nailed this, with traction through the turns aided by a mechanical limited slip differential that you can, on request, swap out for an even faster reacting electric system. Whether you'll like the dramatic orchestral accompaniment that you get as you go along, quite as much depends on how much of a Maserati loyalist you are. The elegant roar of the brand's past normally aspirated powertrains, of course, has been replaced here by an altogether different melody of turbocharged whooshes and guttural barks from the forced induction Nettuno, that's Italian for Neptune, unit that's behind your head. By any standards though, this is a very special engine with a thrust that builds and a linear delivery that's almost as rewarding easing along below 4,000 RPM in GT mode as it is chasing the 8,000 RPM red line in the Corsa setting on a track. And even more pleasingly, this car stops as it goes thanks to standard carbon ceramic discs, 330mm at the front and 350mm at the rear, which work with calipers that have 6 pistons at the front and 4 at the rear. All great for the track and when you're really pushing on through your favourite secondary route on the way home. Where the MC20 really impressed us though was in everyday journeys. These are the kinds of trips for which you'd usually be tempted to leave a car like this back in your oak timbered garage. Now true, it is no 911 in this respect. Unlike with one of those, you wouldn't want to commute to work every day of the year in an MC20. That model aside though, it's difficult to think of another class contender that'd be easier to live with. Yet, there is still something of the truly extreme feel of a properly exotic Italian supercar. It's a beguiling combination. There are 2 body styles available, the coupe we have here and the alternative Cielo Spider model, and in both cases this is just one of those cars that makes a stronger impression the longer you stare at it. The Spider version looks just as good as this coupe. It's only 65 kilos heavier with a top created from a glass panel which at the touch of a button you can turn from being opaque to semi-transparent. Either way, the MC20 is, explains engineering chief Gianluca Antinori, elegant, not arrogant. And you may well agree with that. Beneath the skin, carbon fibre and carbon fibre reinforced plastic panels shroud an advanced monocoque that's fashioned from, you've guessed it, carbon fibre. Plus, there are aluminium subframes at either end. There's certainly a proper supercar vibe to this silhouette, with deeply sculpted, mesh-embellished recessed shoulders below the silver Trident badge here. The roof can be either body colour or black, or trimmed in carbon fibre, which, with an optional pack fitted, as here, can also shroud these radically curved lower side sills. The wheels only come in this big 20-inch size. It's equally striking here at the front, where brand enthusiasts will note cues to Maseratis of the past. Touches like the low-set grille with that chromed Trident symbol. The long fiberglass bonnet here has twin mesh-embellished scoops and flows down into BD-branded vertical full LED headlamps. The rear has something of a Lamborghini vibe, with slim LED taillights framed by narrow illuminating strips which emphasise this 1.96 metre width. Potent twin tailpipes peep out of this lower diffuser section, which you might want to optionally finish with carbon fibre, as we have here. As is the supercar trend, an indented clear Perspex panel flanked by wire mesh allows you to view the rear-mounted engine. The V6 Nettuno power plant here decked out with an optional carbon fibre cover. What you can't see, though, is equally impressive. It's fully panelled underneath, with vortex generators and vertical fins which manage the airflow. What about the interior? Well, to get in, you pull on the butterfly doors, which you'll need to use carefully because they will easily clunk nearby petrol pumps or other vehicles in tight parking spaces. They arch up and they proudly show their carbon fibre linings and leave a wide entry aperture. This will give you a clear view of the carbon fibre tub that surrounds the cabin. You access that across branded MC20 door sills. Getting in won't be particularly comfortable for the poor of back. But it is a little easier than it would be on an alternative Lamborghini or McLaren. And once you are seated, there's a satisfying supercar style feel, and that's accompanied by a minimalist vibe which sees very little switchgear on the narrow centre tunnel, even if you haven't spent the considerable extra sum that Maserati wants to decorate the cabin with the carbon fibre trim that features here on the centre console and on the steering wheel. There's still enough about this interior to make you feel that you've really entered Ferrari territory. Through the wide display you view through this squared off race-ready three-spoke wheel, there's a crisp MC20 image, and you're surrounded by appropriate trimming, the stainless steel pedals, the aluminium bulkhead plate, the Alcantara trimmed ceiling and A-pillars, and the contrast stitching that decorates the dash, the instrument binnacle, the rear part of the centre console here, and of course the doors and the seats. Plus, of course, there are huge silver paddle shifters, the wow factor for which has lately been diminished by their appearance in cheaper Alfa Romeos, but without which a Maserati, well, it just wouldn't be a Maserati, would it? There is an MC20 badge ahead of the front passenger, which somewhat disappointingly isn't embellished with a unique production number. You might expect that on a low-volume super sports car of this kind. You will probably want to add the 12-speaker audio upgrade, in which case the doors, which have a lovely soft leather pull handle, will be embellished by these large Sonos Faber speaker grills. You'll also note the prominent digital drive mode selector over the centre tunnel here with its little 1.6-inch TFT screen. Just below that are transmission buttons, but just two, one for auto drive or manual changes and one for reverse. There's nothing to activate park. You engage that by a second push on the steering wheel's blue starter button when you power the car off. The electronic handbrake, that comes on at the same time, although there is a separate control for that, which is hidden away down here by your right knee. Also separately controlled is the door release. It's usually activated by this lower button here, but it's also operable by a hidden little leather strap over your right shoulder. Maserati doesn't want you to get trapped inside the car if it gets a flat battery. There's a digital rear view mirror too. That won't please everybody. We don't like them either, but you'll quickly realise that you have to have that if you press the button below the mirror surface to do without it. This reveals that you can see almost nothing conventionally out of the back. We mentioned the 10.25-inch TFT display you view through this leather-stitched wheel. As you'd expect on a car of this kind, it's dominated by a central rev counter. In the centre of that, you're briefed on digitalised speed, plus your gear and drive mode selection. The small readouts for time, and if you have had it fitted, the nose lift system in the top right and left of the screen, they'll usually be hidden by the steering wheel rim, but it's easier to see the temperature and the fuel meters along the bottom of the monitor. Above these are spaces that you can just leave blank for extra driving focus or customise by pushing buttons at the end of the wheel stalks. The right hand one can be configured to show either brake and throttle usage, boost and torque outputs, a drivetrain graphic or tyre pressures. If you press the left stalk, that'll show trip data or a compass, and a long press delivers a full screen mapping that you wouldn't normally expect to see on a car of this kind. Everything else you might need to know can be found on the central infotainment screen, also 10.25 inches. Yes, everything, and that includes, unfortunately, the climate function. So every time you want to alter the cabin temperature or the airflow, you have to fish around in sub-menus. It's a screen from the Stellantis parts bin, but parts of it feel quite Maserati bespoke, particularly the My Car part of the vehicle section, via which you can oversee service requirements, tyre pressures, and view a drive mode explorer with a G-force meter. Vehicle is the lowest of the shortcut options on this monitor's left-hand frame, just above our virtual access buttons for phone, nav, climate and music. The main part of the display can show the features that you most regularly use. Here we've got nav mapping and radio selection. And along the top are shortcut options for apps, drive profiles, and the Alexa system that can supplement the standard Maserati Intelligent Assistant voice control setup. As you would expect, navigation, a full suite of connectivity services, and both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, they're all included too. Seat comfort is vital for this Maserati's GT aspirations. It delivers in that regard, even if you swap out the standard lumbar adjustable 6-way power sport comfort seats for the pricey optional lightweight Sabelt monocoque racing chairs we have here. As you might expect in a super sports car, cabin storage rooms at a bit of a premium. There is a small tray with a wireless charging mat ahead of the drive mode dial there, and a very compact lidded box between the seats here with USB-A and USB-C ports. The butterfly doors don't, of course, have door bins, and glove box space, well, that's severely restricted, let's say. You're not helped much in terms of stowage by this 50-litre space beneath the bonnet, which has a light and a 12-volt socket. It's so shallow that it's difficult to imagine what on earth you could stow in here, and in any case, this space heats up uncomfortably during spirited driving. So pretty much anything that you'll be taking with you has to go in the rear. Lifting up this tailgate reveals the true glory of the Nettuno V6 with its Nera oil and water reservoirs. The power plant here is embellished with the optional carbon fibre cover. The boot space, which is 100 litres in size and has a light, is slightly deeper than at the front, but not much. You'll have to pack very carefully indeed. We'd say the optional bespoke Amenegildo Zegna Italian design luggage set is pretty much essential here. At the time of this test in spring 2024, Maserati was asking just over £227,000 for this MC20 coupe, but most owners will be spending close to £250,000 once they've specced up the cars to taste. This particular car, believe it or not, is configured to a total sum of over £310,000. Yes, really. The alternative MC20 Spider open top model listed from around £252,000 as we filmed, so quite a few of those will also leave the showroom spec'd up to over £300,000. As we filmed, Maserati was also preparing to launch a full electric MC20 model, the MC20 Folgore, which will probably be just as fast as this combustion version. But would you really want to do without that signature V6 Nettuno roar? Well, we certainly wouldn't. If you've, however, decided that it simply has to be an MC20, you're going to need to know about equipment features. Now, before we get on to options, let's brief you first on what comes as standard here. So for nearly £250,000, you'd hope that quite a lot would. Well, the core engineering features here are of course common to all MC20s, the DCT 8-speed paddle shift gearbox, the double wishbone sports suspension setup with its active dampers and the mechanical limited slip differential. Plus there's launch control, active cruise control and the digital drive mode system with GT, wet, sport and Corsa settings. You also get 20-inch birdcage gloss dark Miron design alloy wheels fitted out with black calipers and a carbon ceramic braking setup. And you can tick off full LED headlights, all-round parking sensors, keyless entry, a rear view camera and LED tail lamps. Owners also get 10 years use of the Maserati Connect app. That allows you to control vehicle status functions and get alerts onto your smartphone or your smartwatch. Plus it'll also help you find the car if you've gone and forgotten where you parked it. Maserati does include an indoor car cover and a battery charger too. And there is an alarm of course, but the brand unfortunately doesn't include the vehicle tracking system that an exotic sports car of this kind really ought to have. Inside, the cabin comes trimmed in premium leather and Alcantara, plus you get dark aluminium gear shift paddles, Trident embossed headrests, stainless steel sports pedals and an aluminium footrest. There's also a frameless digital rear view mirror, dual zone climate control, a wireless charging mat and a 10.25-inch instrument screen. Now that is also the size for the central infotainment screen too. Now this comes with Maserati Intelligent Assistant voice control. There's also navigation, a 6-speaker premium DAB audio system, a full suite of connectivity services and both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring. Right, on to options. Now your starting point in specifying this car will lie with the 5 different paint colours and the 20-inch wheel rims. We have Giallo Genio yellow here, matched to birdcage gloss black diamond cut design alloys with blue calipers. There are 6 other caliper shades available. You can dress up your MC20 like a race car with various liveries and what Maserati calls dreamlines if you want to look like a racetrack refugee. There is an expensively vast Furio Serie range of paint and livery choices. You're then to work on interior colours, cabin design and trim. There are lots of different and very pricey options. We have Pelle Nero Sate upholstery here with Giallo stitching plus matching Nero colouring for the carpet and the stitching along with carbon fibre trim. Next, you'll need to consider the 4 optional packs being offered here, one of which is the driver assistance package. Now we're going to brief you on that in just a moment. The other 3, however, are all about aesthetics, and they start up with the exterior carbon fibre pack that we have here, and that uses that material for the bonnet, the door and wing sills, the front splitter and the rear diffuser. Plus it adds dark exhaust tips too. Ideally though, you'd want one of the carbon fibre interior packages as well. Now there are 2 of those. The base one is interior carbon package light, and that gives you that material on the gear shift paddles and the door sills. If you want the full effect though, you're really going to have to go for the alternative interior carbon fibre pack, which adds a carbon fibre cluster cap. What about individual options? Well, we've got quite a few of those fitted here. If you're urban based, or even if you're not actually, we'd suggest you consider paying extra for the suspension lift system. This helps when ground clearance is needed, for example, when you need to cross over a speed hump. With this, you press a button to lift the front axle by 50 millimeters. The system works at speeds up to 25 miles an hour. If you go faster than that, it'll automatically return the car to its normal ride height. Now, for extra cornering traction, you can also pay extra to change the mechanical limited slip differential with an eLSD electronic one. To spoil ourselves inside, we'd add the optional Sonos Faber high premium audio system, which has 12 speakers and 695 watts of output. And that delivers what Maserati describes as the best sound made in Italy, with the exception of that gorgeous engine, of course. Obviously, there's plenty else you can add too. Here we've got a carbon fibre engine cover, plus electrochromatic exterior mirrors and an Alcantara racing trimmed interior with heated, power adjustable, lightweight monocoque racing seats. If you wish, then carbon fibre can be applied to the rear spoiler, the roof, which can also be black finished, and the front seat backs too. You can also add a powered steering column. There are branded door sills and a home link system too, which will open your garage door as you arrive home. You can additionally buy a Master Maserati driving experience. Practical touches, well, they include front and rear trunk mats, stainless steel door sills and branded floor mats. Plus, given the severely restricted size of the boot, as we said in our design section, the optional bespoke Menegildo Zegna Italian design luggage set, that's pretty much essential. On to safety. Now, Euro NCAP hasn't demolished an MC20 in safety testing, which would be a bit of a travesty. But if they did, you'd expect this Maserati to stand up pretty well, thanks to its strong motorsport-style carbon fibre tub. The Spider open-topped version compensates for the torsional loss of roof by using a slightly thicker carbon fibre of rearranged weave. The roof system's extra weight is compensated for by an aluminium roof carrier, and that lies below the rear deck, and it's bolted to the rear strut towers and to the engine cradle, and that significantly reinforces the rear end. Like most of its rivals though, neither MC20 model is exactly over-endowed with safety kit of the camera variety. Unlike the average Super Mini these days, there's no autonomous braking system. Maserati does provide a blind spot alert with a rear cross path setup, but that's only optional. This comes included in the optional driver assistance package that we mentioned earlier on. That also includes, incidentally, traffic sign and pedestrian recognition, plus a surround view camera system and also auto-dimming heated power folding side view mirrors. The safety features you do get as standard are merely basic items of the passive kind. Just 4 airbags, twin front and side, tyre pressure monitoring, and the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability. A full electric MC20 is under development, but if you've got an ounce of petrol running through your veins, you're going to want this V6 turbo version, of course, and you're going to have to pay for your pleasures at the pumps. Maserati quotes a combined cycle figure of 24.6 mpg for this coupe and a lowest figure of just 13.6 mpg, and you'll probably be lucky to hit that if you take the car on track. It's 24.1 mpg for the Spider version. If you don't drive too hard, you could think in terms of a range of around 300 miles from the 60-litre fuel tank. Exercise your right foot just a little though, and in our experience, the predicted range figure on the instrument cluster there is going to probably fall to around half of that. What about emissions? Well, the combined CO2 reading for the coupe is just as bad, 261 grams per kilometre, 265 grams per kilometre for the Spider. But again, those figures are based on driving a lot more frugally than an MC20 owner normally would. Exercise your right foot a little and those efficiency figures are going to drop like a stone. To give you an idea of what that means, the low rate CO2 figure for this coupe is quoted at a smoky 470 grams per kilometre. To be honest, we'd hope for a bit better than that, given all the fuss that Maserati's made about their patented dual combustion chamber per cylinder tech, borrowed from F1, which is used by this car's Nettuno engine. With this, a smaller pre-chamber helps to create a more efficient burn in the main combustion chamber, and that's supposed to allow for a high output to be matched by respectable fuel consumption. Well, on this showing, it really doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference. Similarly performing rival McLaren GTS without all that tech returns broadly the same efficiency figures, although to be fair, that is aided by the fact that that Woking built model is quite a lot lighter than an MC20. Now, Maserati claims that this car weighs in around 1.5 tons, but that's dry. Loaded with fluids and equipment, you can expect that figure to be nearly 1.7 tons, which is somewhat portly for a supercar of this size. So maybe that clever combustion chamber tech is doing its bit after all. Anyway, high running costs are expected for a super sports car in this segment, of course. You'll also need to allow a decent amount in your ownership budget for the replacement of tyres and brakes if you're planning to use this car hard. Still, you should cheer up a bit when it comes to considering the residuals. They should be very solid indeed, given this car's extreme rarity. Experts reckon at least around 56% of retained value after 3 years and 36,000 miles. Although, if you load up this car with expensive extras, like this test car has been, don't expect too much of that outlay back at resale time. Obviously, this car falls into the top VED band, which, as we filmed, meant a first-year road fund licence of £2,605. It goes without saying that insurance is a top-of-the-shop Group 50. Like all Maseratis, this one comes with a 3-year warranty. It would probably be sensible to consider a warranty extension either to 5 years with unlimited mileage or up to 7 years covering mechanical components. There's also what the brand calls an extra 10 warranty that gives you driveline cover for up to 10 years. From new, the car comes with an included Maserati maintenance plan, which includes the first 3 scheduled services, a package which can, if required, be transferred by the first owner. Further prepaid servicing plans are available, offered under an MC20 premium service package and covering the first 3 to 7 garage visits, including a complimentary pickup and delivery service. A final word about the all-electric version of this car, the MC20 Folgore. Details weren't finalised when we were making this film, but we expect that Maserati EV to use an 83 kilowatt-hour battery that's able to charge it up to 270 kilowatts and offer around 300 miles from a single charge. So, the wait was worthwhile. For as long as most of us can remember, a Maserati sports car was a model you chose if you couldn't quite afford a Ferrari and you wanted more of a GT. Or more recently, it wasn't a sports car at all, but a luxury saloon or an SUV. Now, however, just as Maserati returns to motorsport, it returns to the super sports car sector too, and in some style with this MC20. Predictably, perhaps, the price is almost as arresting as the offered performance, and not everyone will like the turbocharged aural accompaniment of the potent Nettuno engine. But otherwise, this represents a grand return to form for this famous Italian marque. Being no doubt, if you are fortunate enough to be looking at a Ferrari Roma, a Lamborghini Huracan, a McLaren GTS or something similar, this Maserati should also be in your thinking. After all, there's just so much about it that you might love. The styling and the carefully crafted cabin combined with an engaging yet accessible driving experience, which has a lot to do with the way that it's rather better than the competitors we just mentioned at being both a super sports car and a GT. And the best bit is that with new Stellantis investment behind the company, this might just be the start of what Maserati can achieve. A new era has begun.